Very happy to have four fantastic panelists. I like to call them friends, but they're also great clients that work with me here at MLevel. So I definitely appreciate them taking time out of their busy days to join and kind of share their thoughts in regards to what's taking place within the world of L&D. So to start on our introductions, I'm joined by Stacey Collins. Stacey is the manager of distribution learning, specifically evaluation and operations for the Cooperators. Cooperators is one of the largest insurance providers in the country of Canada. So it's exciting for me because my wife is from Canada as well. So it's nice to represent that and have Stacey representing. She's located in the north part of Ontario in Sault Ste. Marie. So Stacey, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Josh.
Yeah. Also joining us, Theo Carter Jr. Theo is just a dear friend. I've known Theo for years now. Theo is helping myself as well as Marc represent the ATL, or is better known as Atlanta, Georgia. So Theo serves as the Senior Director of Learning for the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. Theo, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And then we'll send it north of the border once again to Dale Smith. Dale's been a great friend. Dale and I connected, goodness, I think it was in June. And I feel like we've known each other for 10 years now. Dale and I had the pleasure of working on the Garth Brooks Drive-In series and training over 1,000 employees in 3 days for 360 different venues across the world to present Garth Brooks's Drive-In concert. So Dale, welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you.
Yeah, and finally, just a great friend, a friend of the family, a friend just of every which way. Marc is just such a kind soul when it comes to everything that is in life. And the great part for Marc and I is that we literally live in the same hometown. So we're separated by just a couple of miles, especially in this virtual world. It feels really close now. Marc's the digital learning leader at Chick-fil-A. Marc, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Josh. It's a pleasure to be here.
For sure. So to get started, you know, if you've attended my webinars, I always like to start with one quote. And I think this quote really resonates in regards to what we faced in 2020. We all have a fear of the unknown. What one does with that fear will make all the difference in the world. And if I could take a poll, and we're not going to take a poll just because we don't have that technology, but I'm guessing we all had a fear that started kicking in sometime in March, maybe for others in April, just depending if you watched the news or you didn't, or what country you might have lived in, but we all had a fear. And the interesting part is with the four panelists, I got to share this fear with each one of them, and understanding the challenges that they were each faced with, how we were just going to survive just as individuals, as people with families, let alone our jobs in regards to what we were going to do and how we were going to make things happen, especially in regards to learning and development. I think a lot of us thought learning and development might be done, right? This might just be the end. What are they going to do with our roles? What are they going to do with our positions? But what ended up happening is that we actually came on top. They needed us more than ever. We really had that opportunity to make a difference. So when we think about it, really the role of learning and development continues to broaden, with many learning leaders helping facilitate and support change initiatives in their organization. But in this unprecedented time, the time of COVID-19, the pandemic, to racial and social unrest just across really the US as well as the world, leaders have been required to truly rethink how their businesses operate and find new avenues to reach that goal. But as we move into a new year, and we're just days away from 2021, as amazing as it seems, I know Stacey and I joked about this, where did 2020 go? And we're kind of glad it's gone. But we're already going into 2021. We must begin to shift our focus to the future and plan for that next chapter. And for L&D, you know, what does that mean? How do we ensure employees have the skills they need to meet the ever-changing needs of the business, be it remote? You know, some of our clients are coming back in person. But as we move forward, the most innovative and successful training organizations will be those that apply the knowledge they've gained this year to create opportunities for future growth and expansion. The trends for 2021 reflect the changing nature of work and how learning leaders are uniquely positioned to guide their organizations through the change and achieve new levels of success. And with that, I'm going to pose a question to each one of our panelists, and then we'll really get into a discussion. For all the attendees, once again, welcome. For those that are just joining, we will have a question and answer portion of the webinar towards the end, so make sure that you hold those questions, and we'll definitely go through that with our panelists towards the end. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And Dale, we're going to start with you if it's okay.
Absolutely.
And the question that's posed to all of you, will we return to face-to-face learning, perhaps at first masked and socially distanced? Or will our pandemic-driven move to digital communication and collaboration finally deliver what the top L&D trends list for years, a digital L&D revolution? And Dale, go ahead, and 30 seconds is awesome. 2 minutes is at the max.
Thank you, Josh. I mean, my easy answer is yes. I do subscribe to the fact that, I think the digital, revolution is here. I think what we've seen this year is a lot of our clients that we work with on their training needs have already started that shift, or if not fully adopted that shift. And I think it's here to stay, but there's probably some room for a blend, but definitely digital has been fully adopted in most of the programs that we're working on for clients.
Okay, we'll come south of the border. Marc, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Josh. So for us, face-to-face training has always just been table stakes of the way that Chick-fil-A trains our stakeholders, our restaurant operators, our restaurant leaders. And I don't see that ever going fully away. However, I do, to Dale's point, see especially classroom learning going to more of a blended model. We very rapidly accelerated our virtual classroom strategy because of this pandemic early this year. Last year, we spent a lot of time in different approaches to delivering virtually. I think the consensus was, hey, we'll apply it when it makes sense or when we have, kind of the right setting. Well, that setting became very apparent in March of this year, right? So all of our learning has gone virtual, but I can see it swinging back to a more blended mix here when we actually can get learners back into our support center to learn face-to-face again.
Yeah, thanks, Marc. I appreciate that. Stacey, how about you in regards to the cooperators and what you all have to do across country?
Sure. Yeah. I really think that it's really going to vary from an organization perspective based on an organizational culture, the past experiences, current strategies, and really the ability of our organizations to pivot and shift. I think one of the things that COVID has really done for us is it's provided an opportunity for L&D to detour from our long-term plans. So we've always had long-term plans to move away from face-to-face, facilitator-led to, it's provided us with a shortcut to really get to that digital revolution a lot faster. I think we now have executive attention that we maybe were always looking for. We have that now to be able to speed our process along. I agree with Marc and Dale. I think there's probably always going to be an appetite for some form of face-to-face training in our organizations, and I just really hope we don't lose what we've gained over these last few months, and that and executives are looking for some of the data that we hopefully have been collecting to prove that these virtual trainings that we've been thrown into. Some organizations, we've been virtually training for 12 years, but let's prove to them that we can do it just as effectively in a different modality than just face-to-face.
Well, Stacey, I'm glad you brought up data, and we're going to be diving into that a little bit later on because you know how important data is.
I would.
Theo, how about you? Your situation is so unique. You're faced with not only training an internal organization, but you're also training the public as well. You're training providers that are just out there that aren't necessarily employees of yours. So how have you seen that change?
Yeah, so a few seconds just to kind of run through what Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities, it's a mouthful. DBACD for short, what we do, we serve people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, substance abuse disorders, or any mental health challenges. And we run 5 hospitals across the state. We also provide community services and collaborate with local service providers, like Josh was saying. So in a lot of ways, we never really ended our training because for the hospitals, we had there wasn't really an opportunity to suspend or end the programming that we have there. What we had to do was take a little bit of time to figure out how we were going to create social distancing and provide PPE and do all of that. On the community side, though, we did have to cancel. And so we ended up converting our conferences and a lot of the programs that we would have for in-person training to webinars, to online development, thanks to a lot of our partners in that area, including you guys, Josh, with MLevel. We were able to convert all of that and really be successful at presenting information to our colleagues, our partners, internally as well as externally, without much of a hitch, without too much of a hiccup. The benefits of this was that our partners inside, who I worked for government, I worked for government for many, many years, and we don't change easily. So in some ways, because of COVID, this was a shock to the system, and all of a sudden, like Stacey was saying, people were aware that, hey, this could work. We can do this. And so I see in the future, as a social service organization, we will not, go completely with online and using just the digital technology for our training. We will have in-person courses. We have no choice. We have to do that. But how we do it is going to be, like Marc was saying, it's going to be blended. We're going to be using a lot of different avenues and ways to present information. And I think we're more educated now and more formalized with how we're going to present information to our colleagues and partners across the state.
No, that's awesome, Theo, and I definitely appreciate you giving an inside look in regards to what DBHDD is, better as I know it, does, throughout really the state of Georgia. And we're so appreciative of the hard work that they do, really to help those that need that help. So moving on in regards to the different, questions that, have come about from the discussions that all of us have had, I really want to help the attendees understand, how have you really built a learning culture while working from home? How has that changed? Because you really had to change the way that people think about learning. And Marc, maybe we can, throw that to you. I know it's a different question because with the team members still within the restaurants and the operators still operating, doing amazing things throughout their community, there's still training that had to take place. So how have you kind of, built that learning culture, especially in the world of COVID?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And honestly, Chick-fil-A's culture is very relational. We highly value that face-to-face relationship, and that goes with learning as well. All of our restaurant operators curate their own training experiences using the resources that we at corporate provide. So those have still been there for team members, which is great. What we miss is that kind of face-to-face interaction with our operators and with restaurant leaders. We have built somewhat of a virtual learning culture, I think, just by nature of us craving that face-to-face interaction, right? And so we didn't cancel really our regularly scheduled learning programs. We did put some on hold, did a few, but we rapidly moved a lot of those face-to-face programs online, and tried to keep as much of the same content in the virtual version that we had in the face-to-face version. And I think just by nature of keeping that face-to-face culture going on platforms like this, where we could see one another's faces, as well as learn the material, I think that's just been critical to keep that learning culture going.
Yeah, no, Marc, and I think you see it in, each of the restaurants. I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by 4 in our community, and, depending on which one you go to, you see, the excitement that's still in the team members' eyes. They're still, working, at 110%. You're still getting that, my pleasure, the second mile service is still there, and it's really a testament, I believe, to the learning organization continuing to push learning, in a time that people could have just ran away from that. They could have just said, I'm just going in and doing my job, but that learning's still there, the training's there, and you're continuing to foster really that learning culture. There's no question about it. Stacey, how about you in regards to the learning culture? Your agents are really cross country. They're in their own offices. It has to be hard because, every community is different. I watch it, just personally for, my in-laws who live in Kingston, Ontario, and watching the numbers starting to increase there. The agents there have to be thinking different than possibly the agents over in BC.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the strong benefits that we had coming in, our department was one of the first corporate learning departments in Canada to go remote. So we've been delivering a blended learning approach with web-based virtual face-to-face for about 12 years now. So for our advisors, we've built that culture already. So they've, we've been at home, we've been doing virtual training with them for 12 years. And really the challenge at this point for them was now their staff is in their house with their spouse beside them, trying to homeschool their kids. The dogs are barking. So that was definitely a shift that we had to support. So I would say in that perspective, the culture shift wasn't significant. Where we did experience, though, was in our contact centers, because we also provide the training for our contact centers, and those are predominantly face-to-face. So when we were locked down, we had across the country 60 some learners in face-to-face classrooms, and we were sent home and said, figure it out. So overnight, because our facilitators have been facilitating blended for 12 years, they had the skills to be able to take those face-to-face learners, get them set up on their at home. We were able to continue with 40, and we're super pleased that from that face-to-face group that came through, we ended up with a 91% pass rate for their licensing exams. So the culture was very quickly adapted. I think purely, with the strength of our facilitators and what they were able to do. We did things like adjust, we had some case studies they would have done individually, but with the technologies, we were able to provide them with opportunities to go into breakout rooms, to get some peer coaching. We made sure that they had a trainer easily accessible to them virtually, the same as they would have if they were in that face-to-face environment. So really the shift for them was the move home, not what the experience was.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, no, it's fascinating, to think about, especially, you had classes going on and you
Yes.
were told to stop, and then the next night told to figure it out. And to pull it off and have a 91% pass rate, it's just huge in regards to what can take place. Dale, I'm going to shift that question to you, and I know your situation's different. At Epic, you all are putting training out for large corporations, large retail, clients, really globally. What did you see different, really kind of being that third-party supplier to these large corporations, large retail organizations, to ensure that their learning culture was able to really sustain?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Stacey, you mentioned the word culture a couple times there. So a lot of the clients that we're, partnering with on a daily basis, as Josh mentioned, are, they've got large employee bases, frontline employees. A lot of them are in the retail or the distribution space. With good training cultures in place, it becomes that much more challenging to keep up with that when you have such a monumental thing that all happened to us in March. So I think, for the most part, keeping it going, continuing, like those organizations continuing to put out regular training on significant and relevant topics was very important. It allowed their large scale employee bases to know that, with COVID and increased measures and protocols and whatnot, we're on the front line here. A lot of them were still open as essential retailers. And it was extremely important and satisfying in a lot of ways to hear that feedback coming from our corporate partners, from feedback from their employees about how much they just appreciated the fact that, we're putting out timely training on things like, well, what's the proper PPE to wear in my job? How close can I get to a customer if I'm going to serve a customer? How do we socialize as employees in employee break rooms and things like that? So we were hearing a lot of great feedback on programs that just kind of kept going, right? It just showed how important it was to their learning culture. And then topics was another piece, right? Relevant topics, de-escalation training, addressing disruptive behaviors. These are real-time things that are happening, and they escalated significantly with COVID, right? You're trying to get people to wear masks in stores and wait outside because capacity limits and whatnot. Everybody was stressed, customers alike, right? So putting relevant material, situational based training in those frontline employees' hands was monumental, and you know, a lot of great feedback coming in those areas for sure. And you know, the ability to deliver it digitally in real time, right? I mean, if on some occasions you'd get a phone call on Monday and be like, well, we need to get this new procedure out by Tuesday. Can you help us? That's tough to do in a print-based world, right? So having the digital communications and the digital options that Josh mentioned off the top, similar to our Encore partnership, where we were supplying the training for or delivering the training for the drive-in concerts. It was so key to be able to react quickly and having those digital platforms that we could leverage. So, you know, those are some of the immediate things that come to mind for sure, Josh.
No, thanks, Dale. And Theo, you know, I want to present this question to you. And, you know, to me, this is really brings it to heart, right? You're dealing with frontline workers. You're dealing with essential workers from the start. You know, there's 5 state hospitals that you're in charge of training. And like you said, these hospitals couldn't stop and reset and figure it out. Cases were coming. You were dealing with not only, you know, the customer within, you know, the individual within the hospital, but also the healthcare professional within the hospital. How did you sustain that culture of learning, you know, during this tough time?
Well, I think we were fortunate enough to, in 2019, we had started working on some plans. We had these grand plans for some digital training that we were going to be developing for 20 and releasing in 20. And so we had worked with our IT department, we had worked with budget, we had worked with our leadership to kind of create kind of the momentum for this program. Then COVID hits. So we were blessed, kind of lucky that some of the skeleton, the bones had already been set up for us to be able to transition. We just changed everything. For the hospitals to keep going, what we had to do is we had to rely on the hospital trainers and keep them motivated and prepare them as best as possible to be safe and confident in their safety. And then work with our developers to create anything from an online course to brochures, posters, whatever we could, explaining how to properly apply the PPE. Now, good thing is in a hospital setting, most folks know how to, but you'll be surprised how often you still have to train that. So, you know, just making sure that's constantly out there, that in the cases where we have to have people come in for a training, we can sit down with them and show them exactly what to do. For some instruction that we moved to online, making sure that online training was short, straight to the point, and could be easily measured afterwards. So that was key for us, because knowing that we're in this emergency situation, we have to have people on the floor. We cannot afford to have somebody sitting down for that old school 30, 45-minute training online. We need, you know, a quick 10, 15 minutes in a way to measure it. So people were ready for that, and we're open to that. And that was key for us, that we had leadership and teams around us that were open to these ideas and willing to accept it. And once we pushed it out, we made certain that we were aggressive in how we pushed it out, and saying that we were going to be in charge, that we were supportive of this, and we did as much behind the scenes as anyone else to educate ourselves on the platforms. And I think that was the other big key for us here at DVHD.
No, that's great, Theo. Yeah, and once again, you know, we do appreciate the hard work that those frontline workers are doing. So, you know, consider you one as well, you know, being able to train those individuals. And I know you've had to go into those hospitals and continue to work and operate. So thanks for that hard work. Marc, I'm going to throw the next question to you. And when we think about who should benefit from L&D and really thinking about the side of data and analytics, talk to me about how important data is and how important learning analytics are within the Chick-fil-A organization. And, you know, when it comes down to it, what's the end goal? Who should truly benefit from what you all do at the L&D team, with the L&D team?
Yeah, I think ultimately who we serve is our learner, right? And, you know, if the learner is performing well, then the business is going to perform well. So, you know, really, when we're looking at analytics and data, we're looking at those that are pointing toward the learner, and you know, how successful are they in executing their jobs based on what they're learning from us. And quite honestly, that's been a little bit of a struggle as we moved virtual because, restaurant is a very hands-on type of environment, right? Where you're making recipes, you are interacting with guests, you are fulfilling orders in a point of sale system. I mean, those things are very hands-on intensive. And, what we have done is, and I think a couple folks made this point here earlier, is having digital platforms that can rapidly allow you to innovate and change are critical, right? And so based on the indicators in that data of, okay, well, we're losing engagement here at this point, or they seem to be getting confused at this point. How can we create more interaction or engagement on particular pieces of our content or curricula? We look at data to really kind of indicate those things and make sure that the learner is being successful so that they can, really make the business successful.
Yeah, Marc, I know you and I have spent some time really digging into analytics and understanding them in a more in-depth way, especially when it came to learning analytics. What do you feel? Is it engagement that's most important? Is it knowledge mastery? Is it really a mix of a variety? What's your main focus or your team's main focus?
Yeah, I think engagement really leads to mastery, right? So, for a long time at Chick-fil-A, we've focused on what we call a 3-step training method, right? Which is that demonstrate, imitate, replicate. And, if we can make sure that our learners are engaged so that they can carry through on that 3-step method, we know that they're going to master their position or master, everything they need to know to run a restaurant, let's say. And so that's kind of really what we look at.
Okay. Stacey, how about you? We were talking about data a little bit earlier. You alluded to data and how important it is within the cooperators organization. Sure. And I do know personally how important it is because we focus on it on a weekly basis with the team. Yeah. Talk to us about where data plays and, who should really benefit from what you all do with the L&D team.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm going to give you some specific examples as to where we've gone this year and where we plan to go in 2021. So we've had some really good successes at this point. Lots of potential to continue to utilize our analytics. We've hired a learning analytics team. That's my team. So we do have a dedicated workforce that's looking to support that. But when we worked really closely with MLevel to support us in the planning and the executing, we were looking for a really robust evaluation and reinforcement strategy. So again, using the data and analytics, and right off the bat, we're seeing benefits to our learners where they are absolutely able to, in the moment, see how they're progressing through their training. Our coaches, we're able to provide data now to our coaches and to our managers that say, here's an area of opportunity that you might want to focus on with your staff after they leave training, because these are where they've struggled all the way through. We're looking at things like providing information to our claims organization. We've partnered with them recently to look at their claims data. And because of the claims data we've been able to access, we're making adjustments to our training programs. And then we're going to continue to measure those results, the claims results. So not just necessarily the learner's individual mastery of the content, but how can we improve the claims results by adjusting our training. In 2021, we're going to expand that a little bit to our underwriting teams. What data can we pull from them to adjust our training so that we eliminate some of the calls that are going there that could be better supported from a reinforcement strategy. We're looking at our marketing and manufacturing teams down the road as well. So really, I think what we've done is we've been really creative as to the data that's out there. What are the data points that are available within the organization, not necessarily tied directly to our training evaluation and metrics, but how can we as the L&D team support the organization using their data? And that's been really, it's been a really good exercise, and I think it's been very eye-opening to the organization, different levels of the organization as well. So now they're recognizing us as a valued partner, right? Not a, oh, we have a gap here, let's go to them, they're going to develop training and our gap's going to be fixed. So now we're working in partnership with them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can remember back, to meeting that I had, initially I was at ATD in Washington, D.C., and I was giving a presentation in regards to the data and analytics that MLevel provides.
Yeah.
And one of your business partners came up and said, I want to learn more about this data platform.
Mm-hmm.
And we literally spent probably an hour talking about what data we supply. And then she's like, okay, how do I tie my learning tools into this? And I was like, actually, we have that tool too. And she totally thought we were just a data tool, and it's been interesting to, grow our relationship thinking about that. And, how we kind of create that 360 approach when it comes to learning and data. So,
Absolutely.
great, and I'm looking forward to 2021. I know we've been spending a lot of time, Chris, myself, you, and the rest of your team, getting ready for that. Theo, let's talk data. Data is so important to you. It's important in regards to funding. It's important in regards to certifications and licensure. Where does data play when it comes to learning for you?
Well, for us, we're a public agency, so the one thing the community needs from us is to make certain that we're not just wasting taxpayer dollars, of course. So, of course, we're tracking everything. I really don't know if I can add much from what Stacey was saying, because she hit everything that I was thinking. You're not just only measuring, is this person walking out of this?
I think we lost you, Theo. Yep, and he's not going to know we lost him, but
No.
we'll keep going. So Theo, we've lost you. If you can call back in, Theo. Yep, we can't hear you. Yep, call back in. But
Is
Dale,
is chat open, Josh? That I can.
It is. Yep.
I'll
sure
chat
is.
for you.
That'll be great. Dale, just want to shift gears, and we're going to come back to Theo's point because I think it's important when it comes to the government side. But Dale, when you look at the topics of training, especially in small, medium, and large businesses, what have you seen? I know you mentioned a couple. What else have you seen as a real shift and change over the past year?
Yeah, I mean, so anything, there's a lot of hot topics this year, right? So, if I look back to 2019, unfortunately, things like active aggressor or active shooter are we're very, there's a lot of training going on those things, and that still happens. But I would say the biggest shift is around things such as social unrest, unconscious bias, addressing disruptive behaviors, and de-escalation, right? And de-escalation, ties back to active shooter, but it's kind of shifted to, how to de-escalate a potential customer concern simply from, things that are often outside the the control of the employee. I mean, it's so prevalent in today's space with just the moods, the stress levels of everybody out in public, right? And rightfully so. It's been a really tough year. So I would say those are the biggest areas. What we're trying to do with a lot of our clients we partner with as well, Josh, is they have, they've got great data coming in, right? So whether that's safety data or loss prevention type of data or customer experience data, we're really trying to partner with them to bring something in like safety claim data, right? Like, so what do your safety claims look like, and bring it into our analytics team. We've got a great one situated in Atlanta that Chris Knight heads up, and we're trying to kind of bring it into the funnel, and then we look at their data, we analyze it, and then we come back to those clients with almost the recommendations of where you should be focusing your topic on that you want to train on next, right? So, I mean, there's no sense on training on safe lifting if all of your data says you never have incidents like that, but you've got lots of slip, trip, and fall type of data incidents coming in, right? So we're trying to make sure that we can partner with them to get that data, analyze it for them or with them, and then come back to the table with the suggestion of the area of focus. And there's been I would say there's been a lot of uptick in that area. Just because of how prevalent data is in today's world amongst all learning departments, and when we're working with a lot of safety operational departments, it's crucial to how they react in their business on a day-to-day and a yearly basis.
Great, Theo. Do we have you back?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Okay, awesome. Because you were in the middle of some great comments, and you dropped out. So if we can kind of dive back in regards to that importance of
knowledge right there, and I just don't know what happened. Didn't pay a phone bill or something like that here.
That's right.
You know, I think Dale made a good point, though. I'll piggyback on that. There's a lot of different things that we are tracking internally to see if, you know, we want to train the right things at the right times. We have to be efficient with our time, especially nowadays. With COVID, we just don't have the time that we used to have to, you know, sit back, let's relax and have a nice training, let's socialize a little bit. We just don't have that luxury. Now what we're going to do is we need to get some very important information to you so that you can use it and quickly apply it, which is what all of us want as adult learners. Our staff want to know that they are spending their time wisely. They're going to come out there with something that's going to be useful on a daily basis to help the citizens, the individuals that we serve, as well as keep themselves prepared to do the best work they can do. I think for the learning team right now, the big challenge is we're moving from instructors and trainers to kind of a producer. We're creating an experience. You know, how do we engage you? How do we excite you? And entertain you in a little bit, but also make certain that you have the tools you need to be productive for the agency. And we're measuring that by looking at retention levels. We're looking at incidents that are taking place and how we're addressing those incidents on the units in the community. How are we looking at any suicide prevention information that we're putting out there, and then we're tracking numbers. When it comes to PPE, we're tracking at the hospital level how our folks on the staff, they're measuring when they're going onto the units. Are they seeing staff wearing the PPE? Are they wearing it correctly? And they're tracking that and they're reporting that back to us so that we can know, okay, do we need to change a training? Do we need to do something to address that better? So all that is how we are working, not only just on, you know, you can walk out with an A, 90%, you're done, you're good. You give your certificate. It's more than that. Learning is an integral part to everything that happens here at the organization. And that's one of the good things that we have as far as our executive team. They are very supportive and very eager to have us on board and sitting at the table for all those discussions.
Yeah, and I think, Theo, you brought up a really good point, you know, and you and I have had this conversation. We actually did some work on this, I guess it's about 3-4 weeks ago, you know, the importance of rapidly deploying based off of a need. You know, you had a need within the organization. I can remember, I think the phone call was about 5:30 at night. And you said, how can we spin this up very quickly and get this into the platform and get it deployed? Can you dive into that just in regards to that, you know, development at point of need rather than, you know, as Stacey mentioned, you know, a really long-term plan?
Yeah, I think all of us, you know, well, first and foremost, we all had these beautiful plans come, you know, January, then February hit, and we were like, my calendar, came into the office today and my calendar is still on February. That's how fast everything happened. So you never know what's going to take place. You create a plan, okay, we're going to roll out this training then to address this new emergency. And then you get new numbers. You find out that something else has happened. Now we have a vaccine that's going to be coming out. So how are we going to roll that out? And what are we going to do to prepare and train our staff for that? By the way, you also still have to complete some of these annual courses that we always put on there according to our policies and procedures. So it's just the beauty of our work. You're always ready to go. You know that's how it's going to be. The good thing with, I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but the beauty of the digital platform is that you don't have to try to wait. I think it was you, Dale, to print something out. Digitally now we can go to this and say, okay, and we have great partners that we can go to and say, we have an emergency here. The team is saying, or leadership is saying, they have to address this. They've identified it, it's a problem. And if we don't do something right away, you know, we're gonna have some issues. And being able to have a team that can work outside of our agency, as well as work with our team internally to create something and to roll it out in a matter of days has been beautiful for us. We've been able to get information to our hospital, either the frontline staff or the doctors, the nurses, whoever that we have, and get that information out quickly. But also we have folks in the community who are not part of our organization that we partner with, whether they're vendors, counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, transition home organizations, and we have to get information to them quickly. And so we know that we can do that digitally. We know that everyone has a phone for the most part, or has a computer that we can get people in front of real fast and get any policy change to quickly. But also provide them some basic skills on how to apply that information. It may not be necessarily always the ideal program that we want, but we know that we can get the information out and we can later on come back and strengthen it and improve upon it. I think that's the beauty of it versus having those heavy delays that sometimes could happen. You know, last year, if we were in this position, government works slow sometimes. So we would be having these lengthy discussions and trying to figure out and everyone get on the same page. Now we know that we can make this happen, we can make it work, and it can still be very effective.
Yeah, no, Theo, I appreciate that insight. So kind of, you know, a quick round here, you know, it's a quick answer from each of you. When we think about training and the length of training, do you all feel that we're finally seeing the importance of microlearning? Dale, start with you.
Yes, 100%.
Marc?
I would say absolutely. I mean, and just to emphasize one thing Theo mentioned, so really taking the role of a learning leader to the role of a producer, right? And being able to curate multiple experiences, including short bits of learning that I can consume at the time of need. That's just absolutely critical, and I think is going to be more so.
Stacey?
At time of need, absolutely. Marc, yes. Short, micro, 100%.
Theo?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So before we kind of open up the floor for questions, I had one more question really before a final statement, and we'll do that at the end of the question section, is when we think about 2020 and what we're leaving behind, what are you planning for in 2021 that's going to be the best lesson that you've taken away from 2020? And Theo, we'll kick it off with you.
I think, like I said earlier, that I think the organization has learned that technology can be used effectively, and that it's not something to fear. That you can have a conference, that you can have a course that's, you know, typically would have been in class, and that was the only way we could ever facilitate this course. People understand now that we can do this using technology. We can share this information. And if we need to bring people together, we're going to use that time to really practice skill to develop their skills versus just sharing information. I think that's been the beautiful change for us. And I'm seeing that from the leadership, that people are more on board with that.
Marc, how about you? What we've learned in 2020 and kind of how you're looking forward to 2021 and what that best lesson you're going to take moving forward?
Yeah, I think one thing we're really going to work on is how could we blend the best experiences together to make the most of our face-to-face of our together learning time, right? Like, what can we do asynchronously, you know, ahead of time to kind of teach some concepts so that then the debrief time is really rich, you know, during that together classroom time. You know, how can we assign follow-up work where someone can, let's say, capture a video of what they're doing around a procedure and uploading that back so that it can be coached to by a subject matter expert or facilitator. So yeah, truly kind of blending the best of experiences together for a rich learning model. Stacey,
what about you all at Cooperative?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think, you know, outside of we had the privilege in 2020 of working with you, Josh, and getting an evaluation reinforcement strategy in place. So I'm taking that into 2021, and we're gonna do bigger and better things with it. But I think really taking a look at, you know, the technologies that we have in place right now, and how do we make them more adaptive to our learners? How do we microtize them, if that's a word, for them, and really look to get them to the proficient level that they need to be at quicker and more efficiently.
Great. Dale, what about you and your team at Epic? Because I know you guys are doing amazing things already heading into 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an interesting year and an interesting time. I think, Josh, I mean, you know, just to be, you know, honest, I think back to around March 15th, March 16th, when all of this started happening, and you're talking, you know, shutdowns and closures and all of that. I was on a call with a longtime retail partner of mine who had just retired in middle January. before all of this, and the lasting words that I kind of remember him saying is you guys will be fine. You'll find ways to innovate, and if you haven't found a way to innovate soon, just make sure yourself and your team are constantly thinking of how you can innovate through this, and you'll come through it better. And I look back on that now, and it's so true. I mean, if I try and take the positives out of every situation, right? And COVID and what we've all dealt with here in 2020, and staying positive and having our team stay positive and brainstorm and think of new ways to get similar things done has really ended up being, successful for us, right? I mean, there's always a way. If you get your teams together and you brainstorm and think out of the box and all of those, big buzzwords and whatnot. I mean, really a lot of good things can come from it. And, we were able to innovate, and that, a huge part of that was with, yourself and Jordan and Jenna and your team at MLevel. If you think about, we talked about the Garth Brooks experience and the driving concerts and, bringing all those people on and training them the next day. I mean, if we didn't think about how to innovate prior to the summer, we might not have been able to do that for them, right? So, adaptability, thinking positive, there's always a way we can get it done. We're seeing that in the rest of the world and how the world is fighting back against COVID and the positive outlooks that are coming with it. And, as we apply that to our team, I think that was the best thing we could do. And I truly do believe that we're just set up so much better for the future now based on focusing on this in 2020. The sky's the limit coming out of this, right? And I think that's across the board through all of our industries.
No, I appreciate that. So for all the attendees, feel free to add questions into the meeting chat for any of our panelists. I know that some of you have actually sent questions via email to me already. So I've been multitasking, as one might say. And we'll go ahead and open up, those questions that come in, and we'll ask some of these that I have via email. Marc, this one is actually specifically for you and Stacey. What learning platforms have you made use of during this time of change?
So we've been utilizing WebEx technology. We have Saba, and we've also recently employed MLevel into our repertoire. For my other folks on the line, I hope I'm not missing any, but those, yeah.
Marc, obviously, whatever you're able to disclose, feel free. But I know the question came specifically to you and Stacey. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So we rapidly adopted a virtual classroom platform. We don't really have an enterprise agreement with them yet. We're still working through that, so I'll keep that kind of on the down low for now. But we did integrate that with our learning management app that we positioned toward the restaurants. That's called Pathway. And we also did a pilot this year with you all at MLevel around a very critical piece of our curriculum, which is food safety learning.
Yeah, well, great. Okay, we got questions coming in. One from Jessica Richardson. And Theo, why don't you take this one? What ways are you measuring engagement throughout your virtual classes?
I guess it kind of depends on the class. We have some programs that we transition to a virtual platform, and so we're measuring by, of course, just regular attendance. We also use within the platform, there's a way to track their attention, and that has been a huge plus for us. You kind of want to see if they're actually paying attention when they're on. And then, of course, during the course, we are using polls and anything to keep it as engaging as possible throughout. Afterwards, of course, we'll have a survey afterwards immediately, and then also we'll have some of our folks that will check in every now and then to see how people are doing with the information that they've gained.
Okay. Stacey, this one's for you. This is from Emily Sheets. And actually, Emily, glad that you popped a question in. Emily is actually going to be part of the next MLevel webinar series that will take place in January. And Emily is with Independence Blue Cross. So the question is, Stacey, how large is your learning analytics team, and what was your strategy to get the business to fund that staffing?
Great question. So 18 months ago, I was tasked with building a team. I built a team of 1 because that's what we had capacity for. And now I'm sitting with 4 learning analysts, a specialist that supports the learning analytics evaluation reinforcement, and a technology specialist that also supports the evaluations. So total of 6 right now. And we were able to beg, borrow, and steal from our facilitation partners. So I am in a team of about 45 staff, and through attrition, we were able to maneuver some of those folks to my area.
Great, thanks, Stacey. So here's another question. Here's another question that comes in. This is from Jim Ayu. Jim's a fantastic partner of MLevels. Jim is with a company called eTech, as well as our newest integration within the platform, QEval, which is an AI-driven coaching analytics tool within the contact center space. So you now have the ability within the contact center space to deploy QEval to evaluate calls, and then based off critical needs that are evaluated utilizing AI technology, we deploy an MLevel learning module right to that learner. So that instant learning that takes place based off of AI evaluation. So Jim's question, what is the ideal training time for reinforcement based off of your experience? And Dale, let's go with you in regards to retail, and then Marc will come to you after that.
Thanks, Josh. Reinforcement training, I'm of a believer that, short and sweet, right? So if you train somebody on something the first time, when you're looking at retraining or reinforcing a similar topic, you don't have to go back to the beginning of everything. And if it was, 5-minute training or a 7-minute training prior, I'd encourage to try and look at any data points you can. What questions specifically from a past training were being missed, and then key in on those missed areas or those missed opportunities of comprehension, and focus in on there as your reinforcement, right? I mean, in the EPIC world here, and what we try and work with on our clients from a methodology standpoint is you've got awareness and training, right? So awareness, you want somebody to be, kind of tune into, what the topic of focus is. And then the training is really the more deeper dive into it, right? And being able to distinguish between the two of those to come up with the topics and the components, we feel is very important. And it's always thinking about the learner, right? I mean, a lot of employees don't have the time, or a lot of organizations don't have the ability to give that much time on an everyday basis to training. So we're forced with, how do we maximize the time and the space of the mind of that employee? So reinforcement, short and sweet. My apologies if my answer wasn't.
Marc, ideal training time for reinforcement.
Yeah, for us, reinforcement has to happen just almost in the moment. Especially like in a restaurant environment, we got a team member who has a very short time to consume, what might be kind of a large amount of training. I'm just fascinated by the idea of AI and almost building recommendation engines for learning. In addition to, hey, you've taken these 3 pieces of learning. Looks like you're interested in learning X position. Why don't you take these 4 pieces of learning? So looking at things like that just to make our learning and reinforcement more intelligent.
Yeah. And Marc,
Josh, can I just give a quick on a different perspective that we've been taking, and we don't have the metrics yet to support truly what that looks like, but we've built in a reinforcement strategy over, it's approximately 115 days after training. So they come through training, and then every 2 weeks they get some nuggets, and it's an MLevel mission. They get some nuggets of reinforcement and evaluation, and we're following them over that 3-month period, and really at that point being able to measure where is the knowledge transfer dropping off, so that we can reinforce that in the training, as well as provide coaches the data that they might want to see to get their learners to proficiency faster.
Yeah, Stacey, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was definitely fun to work on. I know, my partner in crime, Chris Weaver, really helped develop that strategy working with your team. And we're all excited in regards to looking at the data side of it, as
Right.
we get there and see what it brings us. Do we need to shorten it? Do we need to lengthen it? to really do that. So yeah, very excited. And Jim, I'll definitely share that information with you and connect you with Marc. Let's see, Greta has a question. How do you see virtual and blended fitting into the learning and the flow of work? Cultural shift that's happening in organizations today. Marc, thoughts?
Yeah, so we think a lot about that, learning the flow of work, right? And how do we kind of break down that last mile access to learning? One thing I mentioned is how can we get a team member just the learning that they need just in time at the time that they need it. That's something that we're continually working toward. We're looking at putting a more accessible layer on top of our learning management system to help with that. But I think there's a lot more work to be done in that space as well.
Great. Okay, well, in respect of everyone's time, because it's busy days, let's go ahead, 30 seconds for each of you. Let's start with Dale. Dale, if you want to start just kind of with closing thoughts in regards to 2020 and how we want to throw it away, or are we really proud of what took place in 2020 and how we're going to move forward in 2021?
There's definitely parts of 2020 that I wouldn't mind forgetting in the years to come in terms of the things we have been faced with, and obviously some of the catastrophic items that are happening in the world. But again, thinking positively, the learnings that we've all had in terms of how to adapt and how to function and how to do business. And tying it back to a learning and development discussion, I'm personally very proud to be in connected to this space, right? I think in March people were tasked with people were faced with a monumental task that are focused on learning and development when effectively they went out of their offices and they were dealing with store closures and furloughs of employees and whatnot. It was just tumultuous times, and to be able to power through, and I've heard so many good stories from client partners, learning and development partners across North America and beyond, just about how they've been able to power forward. And I think if we can get through this year, the sky's the limit in terms of what we can do moving forward in this space, for sure.
Well, thank you, Dale. Stacey?
Yep, I'm super proud of the accomplishments of my team, my department, my organization. I think we've beyond expectation, adaptability, the ability to pivot in the moment, and I think 2021 we're just going to keep the momentum going.
Theo, on your side.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same way as Stacey and Dale. We've been able to get a lot accomplished, a lot more than we ever thought we would be able to. And just proud of the team and everyone's efforts. And just, staying focused on what the goal was, which has never really changed for us. We're providing a service. No one lost sight of that. Everybody kept moving forward. And I think that's just a testament to just everyone's dedication and drive. So that's what we're taking into the next year. And we'll hopefully have a little bit easier way to move forward, and we'll be able to get some folks together. I can see people again.
Marc?
Yeah, I'd say for us, just emphasizing the people side as well, just being so grateful for a team that moved with agility, moved smartly to really serve those that we care for, and we'll just carry that momentum into 2021. I mean, the technology is important, but it's also about that care for your learners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. Feel free to put your contact information in the chat channel if you want, attendees, for simple networking purposes. If you feel free, LinkedIn, email, or something of that sort. But as mentioned before, we do have an upcoming webinar. That webinar will be taking place on January 28th, and that's going to feature Emily Sheets. Emily's with Independence Blue Cross. I'm really excited about this upcoming webinar. We're going to be talking more about data and effectively transforming into a data-driven learning team. So you'll be receiving an email following this with registration information, so you can definitely mark that down for January 28th. But on behalf of all of our panelists, you all are very close friends, as I mentioned before. We appreciate your partnership with MLevel. I appreciate the friendship, especially within the learning and development community. Thank you for taking the time out. Thank you to all of our attendees. and wishing you all the best as you move into 2021. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.